But thank you all so much for coming. My name is Sarah Pierce, and I am the Housing and Energy Affordability Program Coordinator for the Metropolitan Housing Coalition. I oversee our utility affordability program called EveryHome, which we seek to include affordable utilities into the affordable housing conversation. Like today, on the fourth Tuesday of every month, EveryHome hosts a webinar that is related to affordable housing and affordable energy and utilities. And today we will be discussing the 2025 legislative session and what all came out of that. We have two very special guest speakers today, Lane Boldman with the Kentucky Conservation Committee and Ashley Wilms from the Kentucky Resources Council. Lane Boldman has been with the Kentucky Conservation Committee since 2014 and has worked on environmental advocacy issues in Kentucky since 1992, including environmental policy development, grassroots advocacy, and social justice issues. Over her career, Lane has held leadership roles relating to mining, forestry, wildlands, and energy and communications. Ashley is an attorney and executive director of the Kentucky Resources Council. She graduated from Centre College and the University of Oregon School of Law, earning a specialty certificate in Environment and Natural Resources Law. Prior to joining KRC, Ashley served as a visiting lecturer at the University of Denver Stern College of Law and worked as an in-house counsel for the environmental advocacy organization Wild Earth Guardians in Colorado. She is a former chair of the environmental law section of the Kentucky Bar Association and currently serves as a member of the Kentucky Environmental Education Council. So we have two very, very qualified people with us today to discuss the 2025 legislative session. I'm sure you all got their emails over the past few months, but I will turn it over to them. And at the end of this webinar, we will have a Q&A session. So if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to drop those in the chat and we will get to them during the Q&A session. But I will go ahead and turn it over to Lane and Ashley, and I will be presenting the slides today. So just let me know when you're ready to go to the next one.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah. You want to start us off with the slides?
So we'll each take our own.
Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And we'll each take our own organization. I'm the director of the Kentucky Conservation Committee. KCC is a statewide direct advocacy nonprofit that provides policy support and lobbying support for individuals and organizations. Plus, we train on critical environmental policy issues impacting Kentucky's land, air, and water. And we are registered to lobby for both the executive branch and the legislative branch in government. So we're here to assist organizations that don't have that kind of lobbying capacity or want to protect their 501c3 status, deferring issues to us when they need to.
And so I'm, as Sarah said, Ashley Wilms. I'm an attorney and executive director of Kentucky Resources Council. We are a statewide public interest environmental law and advocacy organization. We provide free legal assistance and representation to individuals, local governments, and grassroots organizations on environmental and energy issues impacting our state. Part of that work is before the Kentucky Public Service Commission, where we actually represent Metropolitan Housing Coalition and a number of others that are part of the coalition of joint interveners, really working towards a just energy and cleaner energy transition for Kentucky. I myself and Audrey Ernstberger are the registered lobbyists for KRC. Audrey was really the one that was there in Frankfurt on a day-to-day basis in the hot seat, and she's actually right now couldn't be here with us today. She's giving a legislative update to the Kentucky Bar Association.
Yeah, and I'd like to give credit to Randy Strobo, who is our second lobbyist. Myself and Randy lobby the legislature and the executive branch.
Okay, well, I'll kick us off. I think Lane and I are just going to kind of go back to forth on these key bills. I think if there's anything, Sarah, if it's okay with you, anything, where people have immediate questions about a particular bill, do you want them to do it now or wait till the end or?
I would say that if there's like an immediate question that can be answered, feel free to raise your hand. And if you just have something that you'd like to discuss further in more detail, we can get to those at the Q&A at the end.
Sounds perfect. So House Bill 18, this one did not pass. It would have mandated limits on the development of multifamily housing in areas zoned for single-family home zones. It does appear that this bill, on the pro side, that this bill was addressing an issue in Louisville and other cities that allow developers to exceed density requirements in a zoning district without going through the zone map amendment process. However, we did oppose this bill, and I believe KCC did as well. We had concerns about the impacts on affordable housing, but really also believe that matters of planning and zoning are best left to local communities, and that the General Assembly should refrain from attempting to alter zoning classifications to affect or limit the efforts by local governments to address the affordable housing crisis in communities. And so that, again, these, whether to allow multifamily housing and under what terms is should be an individual community's decision left to planning and zoning. And so this one passed in the House but stalled out in the Senate. It didn't get very far.
Then one bill that did pass, which I think will really help with the housing issues, is House Bill 160. We supported this. I think KRC did as well. An act relating to manufactured housing would prohibit local governments from adopting or enforcing zoning regulations that treat qualified manufactured homes differently from single-family homes, making it easier to build qualified manufactured homes in residential zoning districts. Now, this has been a discussion with the Energy and Environment Cabinet for a while. They've been trying to educate people that modern, well-constructed modular homes are much better quality than what people tend to think when they think of a trailer park or older homes of the 60s. And so what the intent of this was to actually help leverage manufactured homes, modern modern ones that you can hardly distinguish from a traditional home, and allow these to be used easier. Excuse me. The homes have some restrictions. They must be manufactured 5 years prior to the date of installation. They must have proper foundations, consistent with state regulations. They must have consistent design standards with the surrounding neighborhood, and the local government can still regulate them. So when people have concerns that they might have a trailer park coming into their neighborhood and it's going to look bad and it's going to be of a quality that's not adequate. This is to reassure folks that this provides standards, but then allows the flexibility of leveraging these well-designed modular homes. And that was signed by the governor this month.
So now we have House Bill 173. This one did not pass, but really was a loss for Louisville as a community. And I know Metropolitan Housing Coalition worked hard on this one, but let me give some background. In Metro Louisville, after extensive input from the public, including both landlords and health officials, Metro Council adopted an ordinance in 2022, which took effect, which took effect in December 2024, requiring residential rental properties to be screened for lead hazards, and then identifying the hazards that needed to be corrected. It created a registry of rental properties and their compliance status. And based on the age of the residential unit, a lead hazard screening and control would be required in either 1, 2, or 3 years. As you all know, lead poisoning is one of the most devastating and avoidable of child health hazards, and that even minimal lead exposure can lead to developmental delays, learning difficulties, and behavioral problems. Yet the opponents of the Louisville ordinance requiring residential properties to be screened for lead, even after being at the negotiating table on the lead ordinance, once it got passed, they decided to go to the legislature and try to stop it. And so HB 173 was directed at this Louisville ordinance and would have prevented local governments from adopting or enforcing ordinances that create a registry of rental properties for any purpose, including for safety assessments related to lead exposure. After being threatened with HB 173, unfortunately, the Louisville Metro Council caved, revoking significant parts of the ordinance. They agreed to stop requiring landlords to proactively test their properties built before 1978 for lead hazards. The changes instead put the burden on tenants to request inspection by code enforcement officers. And those same officers will conduct visual inspections for signs of lead anytime they're visiting a property for separate issues. I guess according to Louisville Metro, they took the position that something was better than nothing, but it was really unfortunate to see them cave so hard to the Republicans in the legislature. And I think this really opens the door to more future efforts by special interests. Whenever they don't get what they want, can just go, to the legislature and, work to preempt reasonable local government efforts to protect public health. So, this was a loss for our community.
And I see there's a question in the chat.
Does this stop the city of Louisville from being able to enforce their online rental registry? So now and Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, because you, I think, know this better than me, but my understanding is that they can still now have their online rental registry, but it doesn't, I mean, they could, but the way that it was removed. So I guess there's nothing prohibiting like a future ordinance on a rental registry at this point, but the part of the ordinance, the Louisville ordinance that got removed, was making that registry for properties pertaining to lead. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, I think so. I think they did maintain the one-time registration fees for the rental registry, so it still exists. If a property is identified as having lead hazards through either that elevated blood level or the seemingly random inspection by code enforcement officers, then there's supposed to be a way in which that they notate on the rental registry that they haven't complied with the assessment that is required after that. We'll see how it goes. Who knows? But there's no specific lead registry itself anymore.
Next.
And I will add really quickly, just for the conversation, since we are talking about lead here with House Bill 173, the Metropolitan Housing Coalition is hosting a panel tonight, and that is in the Centennial Room at the main library. We will be hosting a panel. So if you just want to learn more about lead and what happened with House Bill 173, be sure to come out tonight. I'll put the information in the chat.
So next we have a pair of bills, starting with House Bill 326. And my apology for clearing my voice earlier. We have an oak tree that's shedding pollen right now. So this bill and the next one following were part of work that a coalition I'm part of and Sarah's part of, Tony, Ashley, Kentuckians for Energy Democracy. And we have been working on this disconnections issue for quite some time. You would think this would be a fairly simple goal to add more protections for utility disconnections during adverse weather conditions, people that are having trouble paying their bills, but obviously they need power, they need water, they need protection. And yet this has just been a constant struggle to get simple bills like this through. I think this is our third or fourth time trying to get bills like this through. This year we did some modifications of the bill because where it keeps getting stopped is in the Natural Resources Committee, which takes care of utilities. And we assume that utilities are putting pressure against this. And what we tried to do this time was also highlight the health implications of disconnection protections, where it's an advantage, protects people from adverse conditions based on health. So this year's bill, it still had the core issues, prevents utility disconnections in extreme temperatures, allows resumption of disconnection after only 72-hour period, establishes a certificate of need, because one of the things we kept hearing was is this just allowing people to get out of paying their bills? No, they have to show that they are in fact in need, that they are in fact trying to make good faith payments or get into payment programs. So we feel like we really did a good job structuring the bill. We put limitations on when they can disconnect. Um, and it requires, like we said, a partial payment plan. There's also a Senate version to this bill, but neither the Senate nor the House even heard the bill. It did not get assigned to the Health Committee as we had tried to attempt. They both went to their respective natural resources committees and then just sat. One thing you may notice, a lot of these bills just are not heard at all. There was over 1,000 bills in this very short session, and a lot of them just die right off the bat. But we have a companion bill to this, which is the next bill, House Bill 327, and that one simply adds to the other bill where it requires the electrical suppliers to file monthly disconnection reports, because part of the problem is just getting clarity on the data as well. And so we want to make sure those reports are collected regularly and that they're available to the public. So, energy insecurity, the reason we angled this on health issues this time is heat and cold stress can be fatal. The use of alternative heating and lighting methods, such as stoves or ovens or candles or space heaters, can lead to very harmful consequences, create issues with off-gassing, indoor air pollutants, injuries and fatalities, house fires. So to us, this was both an energy issue and a health issue, and some lawmakers got it, but simply did not have the will to get this thing heard.
Yeah, that's really frustrating. You all did such good work on that, Lane. Next, we've got House Bill 452. It was sent to House Judiciary, but was not heard. And this was, I think it was called the MOLD Act, the Make Our Landlords Diligent Act. But it established a civil cause of action for a tenant against a landlord who receives a citation for a violation of a housing code and does not remedy the violation within 90 days. This is another one of those that would be great policy that we would love to see. And it's frustrating when bills like this don't get very far, because often, tenants don't have enough recourse in these situations, even where there's been a really clear violation and they've been cited. And one thing I noted about this one is that if a tenant prevailed, they could recover 3 months rent, punitive damages, and reasonable attorney's fees. And I know that piece is hard, because sometimes if you've got a case like this, even it may be really good, it can be difficult to find an attorney to bring the case. But this was again one that did not get anywhere.
And I'll just mention too, if you'll notice a trend probably on the bills that did not pass are largely bills filed by the Democrats. We're in a supermajority legislature, and so the reality is that for a bill to succeed, we really need to have bipartisan support and ideally a Republican head sponsor for these bills. Now, that's not always the case. There's times we do have those situations, and the bill still does not get heard, but and that can be frustrating. But some of these simple bills, if the audience can help us, find Republican co-sponsors for some of these bills, it would help tremendously. So House Bill 514, I don't believe this was on either of our lists, but we put it on here. An act relating to affordable housing developed by property owners by religious institutions. There's actually a couple of bills this session that kind of go off of this theme about allowing faith institutions to develop their own affordable housing on their sites. So this one would amend Chapter 100 to allow religious institutions to develop affordable housing with only ministerial submission review by a planning unit for compliance on land owned by them. And then it limits affordable housing, exclusively contains affordable housing for a period of 10 years and contains fewer than 25 units and requires compliance with design standards. So a good idea, but like I said, there are about 3 bills, I think, that dealt with different aspects of this issue to see if there could be some flexibility with the faith community on housing development. But it was not heard.
Okay, this is 583. Yeah, this was again another bill that wasn't heard. I think we're all we see the trend and the frustration with a lot of these bills. But this was a comprehensive bill on affordable housing that would have created an affordable housing loan pool fund to provide rehabilitation and construction loans to eligible entities. It had provisions pertaining to homelessness provision. It created an affordable housing credit. Again, allowed faith institutions to develop affording housing under certain conditions. It also, let's see, yeah, no, and it allowed the Kentucky Housing Corporation to provide technical and advisory resources to certain developers. So.
Next, we have House Bill 616, which also did not pass. This is an energy bill relating to investor-owned utilities by Bobby McCool, who is in Eastern Kentucky. It would have prohibited investor-owned electric utilities from collecting taxes, fees, other amounts imposed on its customers by any other government unit. Prevents the commission from approving surcharges for an investor-owned electric utility relating to environmental compliance, demand-side management, energy efficiency, and voluntary energy cost assistance. And the investor-owned utilities shall not collect from the ratepayer any amounts except for the recovery of those amounts directly and exclusively related to the provision of electric utility service that have been approved by the commission. Now, the driver of this, Bobby McCool, is in Eastern Kentucky. He also had a co-sponsor, Mitch Whitaker, who's in Fleming Neon, Eastern Kentucky. Bobby McCool is in Van Leer. The power rates in Kentucky Power Territory, of which some of their districts cover, and then there's also a bit of their districts that include Kentucky Utilities, been very high. So AEP, Kentucky Power particularly. So price is a very sensitive issue in that region. Of course, they've also been hit by floods and major natural disasters. So and it's low income communities. So they're very, very sensitive to the pricing of electricity. Kentucky Power customers subsidized an estimated $66 million worth of transmission investments in other states that translated into some cases into the local ratepayers. And they currently pay some of the highest electricity rates of any utility in the state. So I can certainly understand why this might have been filed. It did get heard in the House Natural Resources Committee, but did not move any further.
Senate Bill 8, another one that didn't pass. There was some good parts to this bill. I mean, but ultimately we had issues with it and did oppose it. But the bill would have expanded the membership of the Kentucky Public Service Commission from 3 to 5 members, which would be great. We know that the Public Service Commission serves a critical role in regulating electric, gas, water, and wastewater utilities in order to assure reliable service at rates that are as reasonable as possible. And there's been a whole lot more cases. The workload and complexity of the issues that have become before the commission have really increased significantly in recent years. And so expansion from 3 to 5 members is not out of line with that workload or the range in other states, which is typically 3 to 7 commissioners. But we did take issue with the Auditor of Public Accounts appointing 2 of those commissioners. And just thought that was inappropriate, that the office of the Auditor of Public Accounts Office cannot maintain the independence and disinterest that the General Assembly has mandated that it have if it's appointing members of the commission over which it has oversight responsibility. And so it's another one of those things where they're trying to do something good, but then taking control away from the governor. And that so our position was, all of these appointments should be made by the governor. And it just really, again, I think just highlighting the work that's going on before the PSC certainly, and the need for more resources over there. We also are hoping in the future that there will be just more appropriations for staff members, because we really need to make sure that the Public Service Commission has the number of staff that is needed to respond to this expansive number and complexity of cases. And is authorized to compensate them at a rate that attracts and maintains the quality of staff. And I know that is sort of an ongoing issue over there.
So, so the next bill we have, Senate Bill 59, and Tony, I think you put something in the chat on this too, relating to affordable housing. So this also fits in with one of the earlier bills, would allow religious institutions to develop affordable housing without submission to review by a planning unit if the development is approved by local government. The bill was amended to try to get this thing over the finish line to limit the scope of the properties purchased by religious institutions and significantly narrow the scope of the bill. So it did pass the Senate, and it received 2 readings in the House, but it never got to final passage. So I'm not sure what the final hangups were on this, and Senator Higdon did a good job trying to accommodate people's concerns with the bill. If anyone has any other comment on why this didn't quite make it to the finish line, jump in, but it's a shame.
It was morphing into what 519 or 514 was from the House. In the end, there were the final 2 days of session, there was still hope that really was passed, but Speaker Osborne killed it because of local control issues. So, so we'll see what maybe it's a good step forward for next year, because there was a lot of talk around this bill, right? But they just couldn't get there.
Yeah. So we appreciate the fact. I mean, it did have a Republican sponsor. That does help. So once we complete the bills here, we've got some suggestions on how you all can be good citizen advocates for the next round, because a lot of these bills that didn't pass, some of these things have come up countless times. The disconnections bill has come up many times, and it should be simple. It just needs more willpower and more constituents chiming in, and hopefully we can get some of these passed.
I did want to note, Kentucky Resources Council did actually oppose Senate Bill 59. I mean, we really did appreciate the sponsors' interest in expanding the availability of affordable housing, and we support the involvement of faith-based entities in developing that housing. But we just really could not get past the piece where, just sort of the overriding of local planning and zoning. And so just a lot of concerns ultimately about allowing development projects to bypass that, and, just how that might impact, the local built and natural environment.
Yeah, we agree. I think we took a monitor on that bill. We stayed out of that one there, and we commented more on the other one.
And on to Senate Bill 89. This, of course, is we called it the Dirty Water Act. Kentucky Resources Council, Kentucky Conservation Committee, Kentucky Waterways Alliance. I mean, many of the organizations, strongly opposed this bill. It was certainly, I mean, I know for Lane and I, it was the number one, bill that we worked on this session. It unfortunately did pass into law. What this bill does is it changed the definition of waters of the Commonwealth. And that for just a really long time, waters of the Commonwealth has been broadly defined to cover both surface water and groundwater. So, and it really took into context Kentucky's unique water system, karst topography. Importantly, it includes groundwater. So SB 89 amended that definition and replaced it with tying it to waters of the United States. And so it now means waters of the Commonwealth now means navigable waters as defined under the Clean Water Act. One of the issues is that that rule is in flux. The Clean Water Act doesn't actually define navigable waters. And so, in fact, the EPA and Army Corps are at it again. I think that rule has been amended 4 times since 2015. Many of you may be aware of the U.S. Supreme Court decision, Sackett, which really stripped away a lot of meaning from what waters of the United States meant. Anyway, this was a big loss. I mean, ultimately, they clawed back protections for a couple of things: sinkholes with open throat drains, wellhead protection areas, but they did not address groundwater, and it was very insufficient. Unfortunately, it was the Louisville Water Company that came in at the last minute and sort of green lighted this amendment. And we heard again and again from Republican legislators that said, oh, well, you all had a seat at the table because of Louisville Water, which was not true at all. We did not have a seat at the table. But from a housing perspective, what this does is it's likely to increase treatment costs for public drinking water and increase sewage costs. So because we're going to have more pollution going into more streams because fewer streams were protected. So we also know that the coal interests lobbied for this bill. They wanted to further pollute headwater streams and ephemeral streams. And so we're going to have more pollution uphill means more pollution downhill. And ultimately, it is our water treatment plants and sewage treatment plants that are going to be dealing with that burden. I think that burden is a little less for Louisville Water Company, which is why they kind of capitulated here. But it's especially going to impact rural water districts. We know that more than 3 million Kentuckians rely on public water systems drawing from headwater streams and groundwater sources that have lost protection under this law. We have a drinking water system that is already challenged and needs an estimated $7.8 billion over the next 20 years to provide safe drinking water. So weakening these safeguards and increasing treatment costs for an already strained local governments and ratepayers is unconscionable. And this is one where we heard, oh yeah, and Sarah mentioned so many people use well water. Exactly, that these private wells completely will lose protection. So in Eastern Kentucky, in fact, McCool was one of the ones that actually finally changed his position on this bill after realizing the impacts it would have on private wells. That so many of these private wells these private wells do rely on groundwater that, again, is no longer protected. But even things like our hazardous waste laws are tied to the definition of waters of the Commonwealth. And I think one of the most frustrating things about this bill was just the misinformation that we could not seem to get past, no matter how much information we put. We kept, kind of countering this information and things that that's right, my dog. Things that were said on both the House and the Senate floor that just frankly weren't true. So this was a really disappointing one. The governor has currently said that the cabinet does not have the money to implement SB 89, and so that's going to be we're continuing to follow that to see what will happen.
Yeah, I'll just add that this just goes to show even when you have advocacy groups like all of ours that are working on these things, sometimes the messenger does matter. One of the things with McCool is the local community really engaged him and showed him the streams, physically showed him the streams that would be impacted. And then also other factors come in. One of the few votes that changed, although they didn't vote for the bill, they just sat out, was Christian McDaniel. He's heavily involved in the budget. He understood probably the cost implications of this, and that may have been why he sat out on the vote or changed his vote in the end. So, sometimes you run into situations where you have competing facts, and some are true and some are not true, and lawmakers use their excuses to go with the messenger that they decide to go with. So even though I think we all had very good information out on this bill, they had pretty much made up their minds halfway into the process, and those kind of fights are very frustrating.
I will say on the one positive note was I think how many organizations came together on this, and I think it got. I mean, we know at least something like
30.
1,000 calls, if not more, on this bill. But even the American Academy, the Kentucky chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, came out, signed on to our letter of opposition.
So with that, I put in a few slides just to talk about, the role that this audience can help with on citizen advocacy. So one of the things we do, and I know KRC does as well, we not only lobby ourselves, but we certainly support organizations and individuals that choose to lobby as well. And citizen lobbies can be very effective. But lawmakers get hundreds of these bills every session. They don't hear enough from their constituents. They do hear regularly by industry, the energy industry particularly. I'm sure they hear from the Home Builders Association pretty frequently. And they really need to hear from everyday people. So, there are commercial lobbyists that represent business interests. The groups that Ashley and I work for, we represent the public. So the best mix of advocacy can be you have your nonprofit lobbyists like myself or Randy or Ashley or Audrey that help guide people to work out how to present their bills or their issues, but then working with citizen lobbyists on the ground that have a personal relationship with their lawmaker. So if you go to the next slide. The goals of lobbying, of course, to be an effective voice for environmental positions, to educate lawmakers on specific bills, and to build a relationship with your legislator. But the important point I want to make is I cannot tell you how many times I get calls in February or March from people saying, oh, I need to go lobby my lawmaker on this bill. The legislative session starts in January. It's too late. We lobby year round. I will be lobbying as soon as they get back in a couple of weeks during the interim session to continue on a lot of these bills. So don't wait. As a matter of fact, it's better to not wait till the session starts. Get these lawmakers when times are quiet and they're back home, and you can get them in a more relaxed situation in their home districts. That's the best time to talk to people about the issues you care about. Next slide. So, like we were saying about the water bill, that was a situation where, despite all the messages all of us put out there on how to stop that bill, it pretty much came down to the local citizens that met with a legislator in his own home district. So you need to, we're here to help train people how to put your message in a constructive way so that it might get across to a lawmaker. You don't have to be a professional lobbyist. You just have to be a citizen with a good story about why this issue is important to you. People ask us all the time, what's the best way to engage with your lawmaker? Of course, there's all sorts of ways. You can send emails, you can leave phone calls, you can do social media posts, you can follow lawmakers on their social media. You can write them emails, letters, go lobby in Frankfurt, or see them in their home district. You'll notice I have different sizes on the slide. I've got these in running order. What I think is the most effective way. The in-district lobby visits by individual citizens can be really effective.
Lane, I'll just add on that on the calling. I think people don't even realize how easy though the call system is. Lane is completely right in terms of that list and what's most effective. But just a reminder, if you've only got 2 minutes, I mean, I had a point in time where just like set a timer on your phone and every morning call the legislative message line and let your voice be heard on the bills that matter to you, because I do think there is there's some power in them getting so many calls on particular bills. It makes a difference, and it takes 2 minutes. But then hopefully
it's true. Yeah,
you'll follow the rest of Lane's list, and when you have time, do those things that make more of an impact.
It's true. It's really a trade-off between convenience, time, availability, how often we need to hit them, because these bills go through different stages. And, I'm sure, Ashley, like you and I both have probably feel like we've asked people ad nauseum on certain bills, call again, call again, call again. And because it's in a different phase. And it's really, really important. None of those things on the slide were things to discount. It's whatever you feel you have the time for. To meet in district takes time. If you're fully employed, you may not have the convenience of being able to sit down with your lawmaker. But we want to just make sure you understand you've got multiple ways to stay in touch with your lawmaker. Do whatever's works for you, but we do get the questions on what's the best way to do it, and usually the best ways are ones that take more time and energy, and that's understood. But we're here to help with that, right? Organizations like both of ours can be coaches to you. So tips for advocacy, if you want to meet with your lawmaker, like we always offer to accompany people to their meetings and help coach them ahead of time. You want to perfect your pitch, get your 5-second pitch, elevator speech. If there's a bill number existing, make sure you have it. Keep it brief, because if you're doing this during the session, these guys are running all over the place. It's really hard to get them. We want you to respect everyone's time, and don't be insulted if they short you on time. And the important thing I always tell people, if you don't know the answer to a question, just tell them. Tell them you'll find out. Don't make something up. And then the best thing that I've found is take time to hear them out, because sometimes they'll reveal things that you're not expecting. Leave open space and let them talk about what matters to them. So, we'll leave these slides. I don't know if you guys are going to share these slides later, but these are just some more tips. When you want to have those conversations with your lawmakers, be professional about it. Don't come with a chip on your shoulder. Do your homework ahead of time as much as you know. Our organizations are more than happy to help you prepare for these kind of meetings. Be on time, because they are running all over the place usually. Don't over prepare. I've seen people come in to talk to lawmakers that literally will bring a 2-inch binder of facts and figures. They don't have time to read all that. Okay. Anything else? Just try to look for common ground. A lot of these lawmakers, they may not agree with you the way you've presented an issue, but they may be interested in other parts. On the water bill, we tried to really appeal to the hunters and anglers. We deliberately targeted the Sportsman's Caucus because we know that water quality is important to that group. So, part of the conversation is to find those areas of commonality. And then just reminders, don't come in with a chip on your shoulder. Usually people are coming in because they're very passionate about something. So got to be able to tone that down. Don't bring large amounts of reading material. A one-pager is, if you can't distill your argument down to a one-pager, then he's not going to get it, right? Don't exaggerate. Don't talk about things you're not sure of. If you're not sure of something, tell them you'll find out. Try not to get frustrated, because sometimes there are lawmakers that can be very frustrating right off the bat. I certainly run into them. But you just have to be as respectful as possible. And there's different ways to contact, like Ashley said. This is the LRC's instructions. They still have a fax on there. I don't know that anyone faxes anymore, but hey, if you are comfortable doing that and you prefer to do that, you can do that. But there's plenty of ways you can show up and talk to lawmakers. It's only a matter of your own time and energy and passion for the issue. And then you can always watch the proceedings too. These are on public television. You can see them on YouTube. Anytime you want to learn more about a particular bill or a particular issue, take some time during the interim session, and they can be very insightful on the hearings that are recorded. And you learn a lot about the lawmakers themselves in your district. what drives them, what their personal issues are that tie to their positions on bills. And Ashley, I'm just talking all over the place. Feel free to add anything, jump in.
No, that's great.
Well, thank you all so much. That was a great presentation. Really kind of went over all of the big housing and utility bills that happened this last session. I do want to open it up for Q&A. So if anyone has a question, feel free to come off mute and we'll discuss.
I've got one thing on House Bill 18. Um, it didn't pass, but the language from 18 got added into Senate Bill 129,
Yeah.
which did pass. And so it included basically everything except for the moratorium that was pulled out of it. So we still got there were two programs in there to encourage infill development in the urban services district. It still had some preventative things in there. I mean, it's very exclusionary still, right? But they didn't pass it in 18 and they managed to get it in 129. So the moratorium did not pass, thankfully. So that's a great thing. But we'll still see some of those ill effects from what they were trying to do on rental properties and requiring homeowners, the property owners to live on site. So that's still deeply concerning because even if you do build a triplex, duplex, or it's really targeted at mixed residential development incentives where you build a single family and multifamily on traditionally zoned single family property. They were still going to require owner occupancy on that as well. So that was definitely going to be an exclusionary practice as well. So still some concerns there. We'll see how it's actually implemented.
Was
Yeah,
that 129, Tony?
What Senate Bill 129,
Senate Bill 1, I forgot.
which was I think the tax delinquency program bill.
yeah,
We saw
that's
a lot of like very shifty kind of things happen at the very end that surprised us, of course. I mean, very frustrating.
that's one of the other reasons that it's important for, especially if you're a constituent that's very focused on just a few issues, taking time to monitor the proceedings is very helpful. Ashley and I both, we monitor, I mean, there were thousands of bills this session, and my short list was around 200. And, of things we were monitoring intensely. But during the last days, particularly the last 2, 3 days of the session, that's when everyone starts horse trading and trying to figure out, can I slip some of this language into a bill that hasn't passed yet? And, I also had a list of probably about 30 or 40 bills that are shell bills. They had no language at all in them except for the statute that was impacted. They have to at least tell you what the statute is that they're trying to add language to, and then there will be a bill substitute. And that's when these kind of things can sneak in, no matter how hard we're watching. It's also very frustrating now because they don't pre-file bills like they used to. They also don't post the bills quickly on the website. So if you are trying to watch for a particular issue and you're not there in the hearing and able to get a copy of the bill substitute from the clerk or from a friendly lawmaker, a friendly committee member, you may not see that language for several hours. And then the last couple days of the session, it could already be passed by the time you see it publicly. It's very frustrating. And the League of Women Voters, Kentucky, I want to give them big kudos because they have been aggressively tracking these kinds of shenanigans that make it much harder for you, the public, and even professional lobbyists to catch these kind of changes when they happen.
I did just want to note that Kentucky Resources Council, we're having a legislative update on Friday, and I'm going to put that in the chat. And if anybody wants to join to learn more about more of the environmental bills, we call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. Unfortunately, it was mostly bad and ugly this year, but please feel free to register and join us on Friday.
Yeah, if you could put up, Sarah, that last slide, it has both our websites on the slide, and we appreciate if folks can sign up for our mail list and follow our work. And we'll do our best to monitor the legislative session or support the legal activities related to some of these issues. Our organization focuses more on the legislative side. Ashley's focuses more on the legal side, but we have a lot of overlap. So, sign up for both our mail lists.
Yes, and I know that you all have great newsletters that come out during the legislative session, just listing all of the bills that you all are looking at. I know I was checking that every single time one of those came out. It has a lot of great information. If no one has any other questions, I wanted to ask one final one. What do you think people can do in the interim here right now? How can people who haven't lobbied, where do they know where to start?
So the best thing is, give us a call and talk to us about the issue that you're most interested in, because a lot of times these things will intersect with other constituents on related issues. So it's always good to know where people are at. I work with a lot of groups that do waterways work. So does Ashley. A single waterway can cover a whole lot of legislative districts, right? So if we hear from people all along a certain waterway, that helps us build up a team and advocacy and a force to address all those lawmakers. Similar with a lot of issues. I mean, some of the housing issues are pretty common among different districts. So the combination that I've found that works best is when we hear from citizens with issues, and then we combine their real life experiences with our staffed lobbyists. And then we can come up with a team plan to try to address your issues.
And I just add, to get to know your legislators, your House representative and your senator, and shoot them an email or pay them an office visit, as Lane mentioned, during when they're not in the session, share a story, a personal story about the issue that you care about, and make it personal. Put that in context. I'm surprised, how many personal responses people get back. I mean, I think those emails do get read, and they get read more when they're not getting so many of them. And so just keeping that line of contact is important.
Yeah, I'll say it makes you feel good when you get a response back from a legislator. I had emailed somebody about Senate Bill 89, and they responded right back away at me and gave their own personal story. So it's really great to see that, there are people in your corner wherever you go. Well, I just wanted to say thank you all so much, Lane and Ashley, for presenting today. This was wonderful. And for those of you that are on the call, like I said earlier, every fourth Tuesday of the month, the EveryHome program hosts a webinar related to affordable housing and utilities. Next month, May 27th, we are going to be discussing the Office of Sustainability's Solarize program and their Cool Roof program. That is perfect timing because I know it is going to be a hot summer. So be sure to join our mail list, and you can just learn about all the different events that we are doing. So thank you all so much for joining, and we will see you at the next one.